Hi there, and welcome to our late November edition of Heard Online, in which, again, I have something really, really exciting to share with you. A top UK women's health magazine has just published, or is just about to publish, an article where they're sharing some of our philosophy, like some of our teachings here, which is a wonderful thing to do, as opposed to TED. They decided not to censor us in any shape or form. And I want to give a big thanks, big shout out, big um, um, you know uh, lots of gratitude to Top Santé Magazine and the writer Angela Kennedy. And what we're going to focus on today is actually a part of this article, which is 3 things to do when you can't sleep. So if you're looking for something, something practical teachings, that's going to be really helpful for you. And now, before we go to like those 3 points, just a second of pondering here. Do you feel that there is we have a little bit of wind in our sails? Are you feeling that? Because I am. We had the Guardian article, we had CBC, we had the TED Talk, the censored TED Talk, but still the TED Talk. And just today, somebody from a major news outlet wrote me an email that I haven't even replied to yet, but I'm going to reply soon. But I feel like, now Top Sunday, things are happening. And the interesting thing is that there is always a story of somebody who has had insomnia, in here somewhere. Meaning, for the article that I'm going to look at, for example, Angela herself had insomnia, and she happens to be a journalist, and that is what prompted the article we're going to look at. And I see that this is how the wind in our sail comes from. That individuals who've gone through insomnia, who recognize the value of what we teach here and want to spread it. I think this is where this kind of this wind comes from, which making me really glad. But anyway, enough pondering on my end. Let me share this with you, and there's going to be a link in the description. And by the way, again, I was allowed to share this as long as I credited Top Santé Magazine and Angela Kennedy here. And I don't actually know if the article has been published. It's not available online yet, but it may be soon. But I think it will probably be behind the paywall. So again, super glad to be able to share this with you. Now, this is the article, and the title is "Train Your Brain to Beat Insomnia." Now, some of you in the community here will say, "But Daniel, you always say we shouldn't, when we use words as like beat or conquer, then we create this narrative that there is some fight or some struggle going on." Yes, that is true. But then we have the flip side of this, is that you sort of need to get people to look your way, get some attention, so you get a chance to share your teaching. And we have a whole series called Success Stories, which is tricky because we imply that there's something to some success, something you can succeed in, right? And our program we call the Insomnia Immunity program. So it's a little tricky with its wordings, but I think just something to I think I want to say here is that, yes, it is true that when we think of beating something, it's tricky. But on the other hand, how are you going to get people to read what you have to say if you're not using something that grabs their attention? Something like that. All right. So with that said, let's just take a quick look at this article. And I'm so glad to share this with you, because it's something that's not my strong suit, is to present things in a really nice and beautiful way, which this is. This is so beautifully done. With the illustrations and the highlighted parts and all this, and which leads us then to this last page, which we have this, you see the 1 to 3 here. So let's focus in on this now and see what Angela wrote here. So Angela is sharing with us these three tips, if you will. Insomnia troubleshooting, sleep coach Dan Erickson shares his top tips on what to do when you can't sleep. Okay, so number 1, resist the urge to look at the clock. Checking the time is an attempt by our brain to control sleep. But like a bar of soap, sleep becomes more slippery the more you try to control it. Yes, indeed. This is one of my favorite teachings, and it is my number 1 when people ask me, what should I do when I can't sleep? Resist the urge to check the time. And maybe an even nicer way to word this is, instead of like resist the urge, which again like implies some effort or control, is kind of like maybe an even nicer to way to word this, in the future would be something like, you know, look, see if you can find an invitation to timeless life. Like, see if you can perhaps decide to, not know. But the idea is exactly as Angela said here, that when we feel like we lost something, we don't have something, we want to have that back. And as the brain's, the brain is this problem solving machine, and the first thing it does is often like it wants to have some sense of control, to measure, to monitor, to track. And checking the time can feel like at least we have some sense of control, but in reality it is our attempt to control something that cannot be controlled that leads to struggle. So again, not checking the time, I think, is super helpful when we find ourselves awake at night and we're sort of like a little bit frustrated and don't know what to do. So that is my number one. And number two here, don't fight with reality. And that can sound a little bit like odd, but let's read what Angela said. She said, number two, don't fight with reality. If you can't get to sleep, or you wake up and you're upset that you're awake, you become even more alert and frustrated. Acknowledge and accept that you're awake. This relaxation leads to a peaceful place where sleep can happen. And yeah, very, very nicely said. And just to expand on that, sometimes we're just like in this, the reality is that I'm awake now, and the more I try to make myself sleep, the more alert I'm going to become. So instead of fighting reality, which is like, how can I now make myself sleep, we accept reality. Like, okay, reality is I'm awake now, and that is another invitation. That becomes an invitation to, like, do something different than like trying to make ourselves sleep, right? So far we've seen that we have an invitation to not know the time, and we have an invitation to accept reality as it is, which leads us to number three. And what is that? Well, this is going to be very familiar to you if you're a longtime follower. Befriending wakefulness. Once you accept you probably won't sleep right now, you can turn being awake from a liability to an asset. Maybe it's time to pick up that novel you've been meaning to read, or listen to your favorite podcast. Once your brain recognizes that being awake is not a threat or something to escape, not only does your experience with wakefulness change, but you feel so relaxed and peaceful that sleep happens naturally. Yeah, not much more to add to that one. It's exactly as Angela says here. Once the brain realizes that we are actually in no danger, then sleep happens by itself. Really, really nicely said. Now, there's one more thing I wanted to highlight here. And actually, let us go back to the very top and read a little bit about her own story. She says here that she was an insomniac for many years. She tried every sleep trick around, from relaxation techniques, breathing exercise, and supplements to doctor prescribed pills, but I still struggle to sleep. Well, the prescription pills usually work, but who wants to be taking pharmaceuticals every night? My insomnia was a wired but tired feelings that left me staring at the ceiling while the hours ticked away in a frustration of wakefulness, until the dreaded screech of my alarm clock summoned my zombified brain and body out of bed. We get a real sense of how intense this struggle was for so many years. Now, if we go to the very end of the article, Angela shares here how things are going now. She says, my insomnia has improved massively, which is wonderful. Now, she says, but I'm still a work in progress, with the odd sleepless night cropping up. But I no longer fear being awake. If I can't sleep, I just relax into it rather than stressing out and fighting against being awake. Then I usually fall asleep. If anyone had said my years-long soul-crushing insomnia was all in my mind, I probably would have not taken it well. But Daniel helped me make sense of why I couldn't sleep, and that's taken the sting out of insomnia for me. And first of all, I'm so glad to hear this. And Angela, never a client of mine, just somebody who's followed the channel, I believe, read my books. But this, to me, when I read this, it brought up this question of like, when do we no longer have insomnia? Meaning, if we generally, sleep well and we're not thinking much about sleep, but here and there we have a sleepless night, is that insomnia, or is that something that everyone actually experiences here and there, and who a person who actually doesn't think of themselves as insomnia, it becomes this like gray zone, and then that can invite this question of like, okay, so should I do something to like take this final step of no longer having insomnia? Not really. I think it's just sort of like, again, another invitation to look at things and see like, it, question, sort of like just an invitation to question whether like do I have insomnia anymore? And and again, like we talked about, with Alina recently, it, there is actually like, if we think about it as like a dichotomy, like, yes, I have insomnia, or no, I have insomnia, it's like, it's not that helpful, because that invites us to like monitor and check. But on the other hand, when we start sort of questioning the whole idea of like labeling ourselves or thinking we have it or not, and when this idea of like, when we're no longer really thinking of whether we have recovered or not, well, in a way, that is the true recovery, when we're not pondering this anymore. And when I read something like this from Angela, my thought goes to like, is this really like, is there anything there, or is this just something that everybody experiences, something like that? So I just wanted to share this for anyone that's in a similar situation, or maybe Angela will tune in here and hear this as well, could be helpful for her. So yeah, I will conclude there. I will leave the link in the description, so you can enjoy this beautifully written article at your whenever you want to do that. And that concludes today's Heard Online. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Look forward to seeing you soon. And as always, any comments, leave them in the comment section. Bye for now.